Welcome to Whose Power, a podcast exploring the power of participation in amplifying the voices of young people to create new knowledge and understanding. I'm Professor Abigail Harrison-Moore from the University of Leeds, and together with the Preservative Party, an inspiring group of young curators based at Leeds City Museum, we've been exploring how best to empower young people to break down traditional barriers to influence and drive the way museum exhibitions are curated and presented.
Give everyone a voice, give everyone a chance to pick up the slack of other people, work in their own way.
If we ask them their opinions and give them power to make these decisions from an early age, it gives them more responsibility because they will be leading the charge going forward.
Talk to them and listen to what they say.
In this, our first series, we're in conversation with members of the Preservative Party to find out what participation means to them, what barriers and challenges they've faced along the way, and how they've helped to create new knowledge, bring about meaningful change in their own lives and in the lives of others. In this episode, we're joined by Lauren and Grace.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
So, today we're going to be thinking about leadership within participatory projects, because you're both mentors on our project. So, my first question to you both is, why did you want to be involved in this project? Lauren?
I'll be really honest, when this project first kind of came to the group, I didn't really understand it. And I suppose the best way to try and understand something is to get all of the information. So kind of being a mentor, you get kind of more of the inside knowledge. The entire project really kind of aligns with my own research. The work that Abigail does, it kind of really kind of fuses well with mine. I look at the public, Abigail looks at domestic, and then this kind of whole project is looking about power. We look at kind of domestic kind of objects, kind of domestic context, and I just thought to kind of be in charge, I was already kind of doing a leadership thing within the group anyway. As the group like to say, if it was School of Rock, I'd be Jack Black. So I kind of thought, well, do you know what? I'm already kind of doing this stuff. The group trust me, and I'd really like to be involved. It's going to kind of add another layer to my own practice. It's going to teach me new skills that I need to progress in my own career. So I just thought, why not? I'll say I'm interested, and here I am, senior project mentor.
Brilliant. And Grace, why did you want to be involved in this project?
I can't lie, because it was empowering women at first,
yeah,
and obviously strong feminist. So, and I think it linked really well to the project we were just coming out of, Overlooked: The Untold Stories of Leeds, and I think it's really fun to be able to be almost a detective in history, to figure out who these people actually are and why we don't know anything about them.
Brilliant. Tell me a little bit more about Overlooked, because that was how I met you all. You were in the final stages of Overlooked. You were about to launch Overlooked. Tell me about that exhibition, and for you personally, what did that mean for you?
Overlooked for me was actually one of the most frustrating projects I think I've ever done in my 5 or 6 years of the Preservative Party at the time, because there was no information on absolutely anybody, even in a book or a website or any archive. It was going back to random newspaper articles and trying to connect everything together. I had to look at autopsy reports, and I don't think you would ever think of that in what we do, at all.
Why did you have to look at autopsy reports? Tell us a little bit more about the bit of the exhibition you particularly worked on.
Well, I kind of dabble in everything, don't I? But I mainly focused on the story of David Olawale, who unfortunately actually met quite a tragic end. There was literally nothing about this person. I'd never heard about him except from one book that Esther had. And it was more interpretation rather than telling his story. We don't even know his actual date of birth. That's how little information there is on this man.
And what did you find out about him?
Not a lot, to be honest. The most I would say that I found out about him as a person was looking through his medical records from when he stayed at I think it was Hyroids and potentially Menston that he stayed at, which was 2 mental hospitals, asylums, whatever word you want to use for them. And it was the two drastic different reports and notes from both of his doctors. One was like, this is a horrible man, do not let him near the public, he got what he deserved by the police, etc., etc. And then there was this other seemingly a lot nicer and a lot more caring doctor that was like, this man is very disturbed, he's been through a lot of things, has a lot of trauma. Why would he be put in prison for that? He needs help, he needs support, he needs medicine, but you're not going to give him that.
Overlooked came out of 13 years of the Preservative Party working together. Lauren, you were one of the original members, as I understand it. Tell me how you came to the Preservative Party and how you built to the moment then when you did what has been, amazingly, brilliantly, an award-winning exhibition.
So I actually joined a couple of years after we started. I never thought that I would kind of have anything to do with museums. I wanted to be a high school teacher. That's what I had in my head. I was going to teach high school history. I did work experience in a high school. I decided I don't think teaching is for me. And I just so happened to get sent to a conference by two of my history teachers at school. And I didn't want to go in. My mum actually dragged me in crying because I, at that point, had no confidence at all. And it just so happened that there were another group of young people there. And I don't know how we'd explain what the person did. But essentially the group coordinator at that point said to my mum, well, she can join us and she can come and sit with us. And at the end of that week-long conference, it was kind of a given that I was going to come into Leeds for the first time ever on my own at 17 years old. It was the first time I'd ever got a bus on my own. I didn't even know there was a museum in Leeds. And I just joined the group from that moment on. And here we are a decade later, having done, I think I've counted 11 exhibitions in the time that I've been with the group. I always say Overlooked is the one that will never top. There's nothing that I can see that we can do to kind of be even better than that project. You know, that entire exhibition came out of essentially having meetings with traditional organisations where we were told, no, that won't work, or we don't want to hear what you have to say about, you know, like things like decolonising museum spaces. Our group, we're really stuck in our kind of ways. We have a really strong moral compass, I think, that we want to do the right thing. And Overlooked was that moment for us that we got to say, no, do you know what? Museums have been doing things wrong. And yes, it's going to take a heck of a lot more work because, like Grace says, we've had to go to the National Archives and find every record relating to David Olawale. We've had to kind of track down family members, and that's how we found out about Angela Morley, the first trans woman to ever be nominated for an Oscar, who was born in Leeds. It's from that kind of hard work and that willingness to say, do you know what, if someone tells us no, we're just going to prove you wrong.
And Grace, you came to the Preservative Party slightly later than Lauren. Why did you join, and what have you learnt through the process to date?
I joined the Preservative Party in 2018. Yeah, because I was 16, about to turn 17. And I was scouted by Esther, the previous youth engagement officer, who is now the current youth engagement officer, Jordan's boss. And I came to the museum as part of week 3 of NCS, the National Citizenship Service. And our week 3 was working with local charities within Leeds and just local council staff to put together a massive event about what we had learned and what we had done as a group of 16 to 18-year-olds across summer. And we went to Leeds City Museum. I remember doing mind maps and nobody else was doing anything but me. Everybody was just sat in a room on their phone and I was the only one that was actually listening or partaking in any activity. And I remember Esther at the end was like, I think you would really enjoy this thing that I run. At this point, it wasn't active in the summer holidays at all, so it was purely term time. So Esther was like, in September, this is the date, this is the time. If you want to come and see what it's like, I think you would enjoy it and fit in well.
And how do you think the learning that you both had through having done Overlooked helped you to start to help me navigate the project from what I'd written on a piece of paper to actually what we've done?
I think it taught us how to navigate creating such a big project and exhibition differently. And it really gave us a massive indicator on how to do things, how to get these things done, how to research. Because I think there's so many misconceptions and stereotypes on research that it's just, oh, I'm going to look in a book, or I'm going to go on a computer. But it's like you have to go and find things where it's through community partners, people. It's not just about books, it's about people. And I think we just learned so much that I don't think any other opportunity would have given us.
And we started by saying that, Grace, you said, I came with this title, Empowering Women. And while that absolutely spoke to something that you were interested in, we've now, as a group together, moved into this different title that we're using for the podcast, Whose Power, with a big question mark at the end of it. Why do you think, Lauren, that happened? Why do you think that was an important moment for us within this participatory project?
I'm happy to say it. I think people were uncomfortable with this idea of empowering women. I think that a lot of people in the group felt, well, that was going to exclude them from participating. That kind of idea, you've got men and women, and I think that that's how those words on paper in black ink, to a lot of people, that was like, no, thank you. And I think one of the kind of great legacies of Overlooked is that, at least from my perspective, it's given a lot of members of the Preservative Party more confidence to say, actually, I can kind of voice what I'm thinking, voice my thoughts, tell people when I'm not feeling comfortable. And that's one of the things, obviously, that came out of Overlooked was we want to make everybody feel included. So I think kind of just having that conversation with you, and you were so kind of open to understanding what was going on with the dynamics of the group when people said, actually, we're not 100% about this idea of empowering women, but let's broaden it out and kind of think about it in different terms. What are we actually wanting to dig into? And we have still kept that kind of theme of empowerment. We've just kind of navigating it in a slightly different way, I would say.
And we talked in the episode with Esther and Jordan about the really important work that we did through the Discovery Centre, through finding our objects. And I wanted you both to have a little think about why objects matter and why objects have been really useful in this participatory project for helping us to think about how we talk to museum audiences about different histories of energy and therefore different futures of energy. How did the objects help us?
Do you know what? Again, I'll be really honest. I didn't get it with the objects. It's been a learning process for me as well. I deal with things that are so kind of clear cut or they're so obvious to me. This idea that actually a cooker can tell us so much about energy histories, about women, how they're engaging with things. To me, that's really interesting. Now, I didn't get it at first. It took me a little while. But I mean, for me as a researcher now, that's all I want to look at. I just want to think, well, actually, how can things that are seemingly mundane tell us so much? I think kind of traditional researchers think, well, if it's not written down, then it's not a thing. And that's not true. We can find so much in what is there, and it tells us so much about people's histories who haven't had the opportunity to write things down, haven't had the opportunity to put things in archives. So kind of getting to go to Disco, which is the Discovery Centre, and pick up all these massive cookers. I've never ever thought an oven or, a washing machine was beautiful before, but these objects just became absolutely stunning and kind of taught me so much and can tell me so much about, a period of history that, to be honest, all I know about is what women are doing outside of the home or, well, what anybody's doing outside of the home. I've never focused on domestic things. And, having this opportunity to see these objects in a completely different light. I mean, I've never done an exhibition that's driven by images of objects, and yet somehow this actually worked out. I was really sceptical. I didn't understand it. I come from I need a tangible object that explains something to me. And now from this kind of research, I'm making the leaps in my own research, and I'm putting that into kind of bids for funding for my own research. Do you know what I mean?
That's absolutely, I know exactly what you mean. And you picked up there on thinking about yourself as a researcher. And Lauren, you have gone on and you've done a PhD, which is amazing, and you are now building a research career. Grace, coming into this work with the Preservative Party and working with myself, who I suppose because of my title, I don't think I ever really thought of myself as a researcher, but certainly through this project, I've thought very differently about myself as a researcher and come to a different understanding about what that means. How have you started to think about yourself as a researcher through this project?
I don't ever think that I've had such a set in stone opinion or view of a researcher, because I wouldn't be able to tell you who it is, but a high school teacher told me that being a researcher is almost being a detective. So I've never had the set in stone, if you're a researcher, you're going to look in a book. It's figuring things out. I guess it's a much more linear explanation of things. Whereas through my own research and just researching, becoming a researcher, I've really enjoyed, I guess, the detective work of it all. I'm a very nosy person. I'm not going to lie. I do really like knowing things, figuring things out, than just what is on paper.
So one of the things I wrote into the original application was this idea of these mentors, paying mentors. And at the time when I wrote it, I was trying to find a way to devolve power, to devolve leadership, knowing that I'd come into the room and say, hello, look at me, here I am doing this project with a group who already existed, who were doing amazing work. And I wanted to try and find a way to support everybody in that group to have their own space as leaders. And so appointing you both and the other mentor from the project was part of that process of trying to find ways of leading together. How do you think that's helped you both, through doing the role, understand what you do as participatory research?
Do you know what? I think I can actually put into words now that what we do is a skill.
Absolutely.
The amount of jobs that I've applied for up to this point where it asks you to list relevant skills, and I'm like, I don't have any. And I know now that that isn't true, that everything that I've done for the last 10 years is a skill, that not everybody could do what we do every week or constantly have, your mind whirling, thinking, well, that text document isn't going to be accessible for X, Y, and Z. This is what I need to do to fix things. Yeah, I would have never been able to put that into words. So I suppose doing this kind of mentoring, I'm still doing what I did before. I just kind of take my orders from somebody different, which is you.
You don't take any orders.
No, I don't take any orders. But we take our direction from you. But what you're helping us to do is you're putting kind of what we're doing, and I just think is an everyday action. You're saying, well, actually, this is this skill. You need to put that skill on your CV. Make a list of this skill. Make a note of what you've done here. I would have never have done that. And that kind of section of any job application would still be kind of a slog to write. But now I kind of feel like I can almost quantify what I do.
And Grace, you took on a really important role through a conversation that we had when you were wondering about yourself as a mentor and what your role was. And we talked about you mentoring me and how that process in participatory research of me learning from the people that I most want to learn with. What have you learnt about that process?
I think I doubted myself a lot with the role, and I think I still do. I don't feel that I am able to or deserve the right to or I'm the right fit for this kind of thing because of how much self-doubt I have about myself. But I also refuse to admit how much of I'm a very caring person, not by choice. I will go out of my way to make sure that everybody is okay in the space and that things are getting done in the right way. And I like that we can have that dynamic where you're helping me, I'm helping you, and I love the destruction that we have put on the traditional power dynamic as somebody who would be my boss or my teacher, we're now much more on the same level or the same wavelength, and that makes me so much more comfortable in the space.
One of the main aims of all of our work is about changing the institutions in which we work within, and we talk a lot about the barriers to change, the barriers to participation. For you both, what do you think have been the key ways that through this project, through other projects that you've been involved with at Leeds City Museum, that you have broken through some of those barriers, and why is that important?
I mean, I feel very privileged to say that I don't feel that I've kind of ever experienced barriers in how I participate in museums or anything like that, you know. I'm very privileged with what I have and everything like that. But I think being involved with the group as we have been, I kind of take on what other people are. They're there to teach me. The Preservative Party is a learning experience. I know that I'm, you know, don't really have any problems or with kind of how I access museums or how I access information. I've probably seen myself reflected in projects, but being with this diverse group of young people, everything that they've done teaches me something, and kind of where I am in the group, I feel that I'm able to then go and talk to the higher ups in the museum and say, hey, I don't think this is working out. I remember when we were doing Overlooked and we had an episode where we didn't really have enough budget to do kind of some community participation, and I actually ended up crying in the office with the kind of higher ups in the museum. And you know what? They went and they kind of picked and pulled at different budgets to make things possible. And I think that I'm very lucky in that respect that people will listen to what I'm saying. But what I'm there to do now, I suppose, is empower the other young people to kind of feel the same. I'm very outspoken. I'll speak my mind. I mean, pre-joining the Pres Party, absolutely not. I wouldn't say boo to a goose. But the fact that now I can go to conferences and I can tell people, you're doing things wrong. This is what you need to do better. That's a culmination of everything that we've done.
Absolutely. And Grace, you and I, we've done keynotes at conferences together because I feel really strongly that I shouldn't be speaking for the group, that we speak together. And I know that while you didn't present on the day looking nervous at all, I know how much that took out of you. But what have you gained from breaking through your own barrier and being able to speak to a room full of 150 people about what you do?
Unlike Lauren, I'm not an academic. My most advanced qualification is a C in an A-level, and it's for drama and theatre studies, so not exactly the same kind of vibe. But I've always said that I've done drama from such a young age. I've never had to worry about stage fright or confidence. Been there, done that. So I've never had that level of much anxiety or fear in that sense of standing up on a stage and talking to a big group of people. It's more about who those people are. It's usually rooms full of museums professionals and other academics who are a good 2 decades older than me, if not more. And I can feel very out of place because I'm only 22, but I look a lot younger, and that doesn't give the best impression to certain people. And I was literally at an event this week and I was still the youngest in the room by, I want to say, a solid 15 years at a push. And it should not be like that at all, especially when some of these places that I am in are about young people in museums and about their perspective, but it's still being presented and run by somebody who is old enough to be my mother in the nicest way possible.
And just to add on to that, it's when they're then talking about things, and to us it just seems like it's so obvious. It's almost like they're reinventing the wheel. The information is out there. As Grace says, there should be more young people. When we're talking about young people in museums, it should be young people representing themselves and telling these people, this is what we think, this is what you need to do better. I mean, we had a lot of discussions at this event about kind of questions that came out of a panel that we listened to about young people in museums and how kind of almost just silly they sounded to us. I think we're very privileged that Leeds museums and galleries are just so on board with what we do. They're willing to kind of support anything that we do, but clearly that's not the case everywhere else. And I suppose that's my mission with Pres Party, is to just kind of make people sit up and listen and kind of say, you know, these are the barriers, this is what you need to do. It's not that difficult, you've just got to be willing to put the effort in. And like Grace says, get more young people on board. Young people shouldn't be having to jump through 20 million hoops for organisations to take them in. It's the organisations that should be jumping through 20 million hoops to get young people engaged. It's not a young person's job to kind of engage with the system. The system needs to come to our level, I suppose.
That is how you both lead. Thank you so very much. It's been really great talking to you about how you've learnt about participation, how you've both learnt to lead through participation, and how you've taught me so much through this process. And that is the joy, the hard work and the brilliance of participatory research. And I'm very grateful for you both showing me your power. Thanks ever so much. Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Whose Power podcast, which was presented by me, Abigail Harrison-Moore, in collaboration with Leeds City Museum and the Preservative Party. Music is by Tay, and production and editing is by Chris Garrington and Chrissy Brighty Glover at Research Podcasts. Funding comes from the Arts and Humanities Research Council Fellowship Scheme. If you've got a question or a comment about what you've heard in this episode or across the whole series, you can find the Preservative Party on X at Press Party. We'd really love to hear from you.